allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome to our quarters for the joint meeting. My little thing isn't working very good here, so if I don't understand you, you'll understand why. Tonight we are meeting. Oh, I guess first of all we got to take roll. So you want to take city roll?
With the City of Sioux Falls, if we get a roll, please.
Councilors Aguilar.
Here.
Anderson. Entenmann.
Here.
Erpenbach.
Here.
Jameson.
Here.
Karski.
Here.
Rolfing. Staggers.
Present.
We've got three. Or Robert, is Cindy going to be here?
No. This is it.
So we have three from the Minnehaha County Commission. Heiberger and
Bennigan.
Gerald.
never mind.
Bennigan.
And Bennigan are missing. Approval of the agenda on the county side.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried unanimous.
Move to approve on the city side.
Second. Karski.
All in favor say aye.
We have to do
We
roll
do.
call.
You do
Councilors
roll call.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Entman.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Okay, pass it. Motion passes on the city. New business. Tonight, we will be here for the joint budget hearings for Metro, Sioux Land Library, and Sioux Land Heritage Museums. First on the agenda is the joint budget hearing for Metro Communications. Darren's.
Good evening, Council, County Commission. I'm Darren Ketchum. I'm the Director of Metro Communications. I'll give you an overview of the 2013 budget that has been approved by the Metro Management Council, and certainly ask any questions as we go through the presentation. Some of this is kind of redundant. We just kind of reiterate here, you know, we are the 911 PSAP for this area. Serving approximately 190,000 citizens and take approximately 300,000 calls a year. Of those, 90,000 are, I'm sorry, I don't think there was a printout for this, my apologies. 90,000 911 calls a year, 175,000 admin incoming, and the rest are outgoing and different calls. You can see the different types of agencies that we work with: law enforcement, EMS, fire, animal control, emergency management. Here you see what we have for 2012 and what our proposal is for 2013, kind of our highlights. E911 surcharge income, obviously the big story there is the 911 legislation that was passed this year, and that'll get us, you know, a little over $400,000 additional funding after we sorted through all of our 911 revenues from our providers. Our other revenue, you notice, is down, and that's due in part to the decrease in expenses. We cut our budget some more in the operating area, and the amount that we bill Brandon is based on our expenses. So if we reduce those expenses, the amount that we charge Brandon for fees is also going to decrease in proportion. Expenses, you see the personnel expense. We're not adding any FTEs. This is health, you know, insurance premium increases, and then just standard step increases. So nothing out of the ordinary there. We typically budget, you know, in this year about 13% for a health insurance premium increase, which is typical with previous years for health insurance. 2013 will be our second year with Dakota Care as our provider. Here you see a graph depicting our major sources of revenue, with the blue line being the 911 surcharges and the red being the city-county cash support. The blue was kind of going down there for a while. You'll see for the time period after, that blue line will be fairly steady for the next few years. 2018, though, you'll see this in subsequent years, the 911 legislation has a sunset provision that will go from $1.25 back down to $1. And the reasoning behind that is the next generation 911 project should be complete by that time frame, in theory reduce some of our operating expenses. Budgeted expenditures for 2013, we don't have any capital projects planned for 2013. You know, the 76-24 breakdown, personnel and operating respectively, is very, it's the same as what we had last year, very similar to prior years to that. Overtime, that's historically been an interest of many people, is overtime in our agency. And you can see where we've been and where we've gone since then. And you know, the peak year of 2007, you know, we've come down every year since then, and we budget about 6% of our total personnel costs for overtime, which is about $139,000 this year, and we'll be fairly close to that again next year. We don't see any huge jumps in overtime for next year or anything out of the ordinary. No addition of personnel, so we think our personnel costs will stay well within what we've requested. Our agency ending cash balance, it's something every year you look at, how much cash do we have in the bank every year? Well, we try to maintain around $400,000 just for cash flow purposes. Doing payroll, we have several large bills, and so we need that much money in the bank all the time so we don't get overdrawn. Now, above that, we build money into our budget for capital projects. We have one planned in 2015 for a new telephone system. And so that's why you see we're building that cash fund up to over $1 million, getting close to that $1.4 million. And the reasoning for that is the new 911 telephone system, which depicted in this graph, we have a payment structure set up. Rather than paying the lump sum of the $800,000, we've depicted around $150,000 annual payment. Now, why have we done these things and we build up that cash reserve and we ask for money from both the city and the county? Well, you can see in the past, the percentage of increase in city-county contribution would typically go up 4 to 6% every year. In some years prior to 2009, it would be greater fluctuations. In 2011, we were able to reduce our requests from the city and the county by over 18%. We basically sustained that in 2012. And in 2013, due to the surcharge increase, and then we were able to transfer some software expenses from Metro Communications to the sheriff's office and the police department and the fire department, so they more accurately reflect where those costs are incurred. So by transferring that, we're able to show a 13% decrease. In reality, it's probably closer to a 3% if you're not counting the transfer. But by doing that, we can have stability through 2019 with approximately that 4% increase, which is, you know, typically what the guidance we've been given over the past few years has been that 3 to 6% range, and that's where we shoot for every year also. That is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd certainly be willing to answer them.
Are there any questions of Darren? Come in.
Yes, just a quick question on the subsidy the city and the county gives. What percent of the subsidy comes from the city and what percent from the county?
The after the 911 surcharge is received, we split those expenses 75% city, 25% county. And we do get a little bit of money from Brandon. We take that into account before we do the 75-25. It's been, you know, I think next year we're looking at $39,000 roughly. But so it's not a significant amount of money to adjust the city-county contribution. But we do it after we take into account Brandon.
And if I could just follow up on Brandon, are citizens in Sioux Falls paying, and also throughout the county, paying the same equivalent as Brandon residents as far as the subsidy goes?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
Well, the taxpayers of Sioux Falls, of course, we're paying the surcharge to start off with.
Everybody is.
Yeah, everybody is. And then we also pay the subsidy.
Mm-hmm.
So the citizens of Brandon, are they paying an appropriate amount of the subsidy too?
Yes.
In other words, so we're not paying more subsidy than they're paying.
Yes, that's correct. The way we do it is we look at the percentage of the total calls for service that Brandon has, and it's about 3.4% of our total calls for service is Brandon. And so we look at our expenses after we take off the 911 surcharge revenue, and then Brandon pays 3.4%, and then we divide 75-25.
Darren, and that was just a couple of years ago that we made that change where Brandon came on board with us,
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
And they stand by the fact that they don't really have any representation on the Metro Communications group either, right? It's still the city and the county that are represented on that.
Correct. And I think the reasoning behind with Brandon is everywhere else in the county is served by, law enforcement-wise, by the sheriff's office, so the county's already picking up that tab. Brandon does have their own police department, and that's what we look at for Brandon when we determine their calls for service, because they do have a volunteer fire department. So we don't count those, like we don't count any other volunteers and send a bill to Humboldt or Hartford.
You know, I know a number of us that serve on the committee, we were very familiar with the cuts that they had to take in Metro Communications. And a couple of comments I think that Councilor Jameson and I made in the past is that we had reached a point where we did not want to endanger the health, safety, and welfare in our response to that. And I think the cuts that we had reached at this point in time had put us really at the bottom of where we really needed to be. And I really commend you and your staff for the efforts that you've made to manage your expenses and looking at what your needs are in the future. And especially thank you for all of your hard work in helping to get the that 911 bill passed in Pier that got us some more money. So that was really a job well done. Thank you.
If I could share a question. We don't have a per capita cost then based on the use. It's more of a usage with Brandon, but I mean, even breaking it down to the city-county level, I appreciate what Councilor Enneman's saying, but do we know the per capita cost, how we're splitting this out?
I could figure it out. I don't have that number with me immediately. Right?
For informational, I'd like to know it. If you could forward that
Sure,
to the
absolutely.
council, that'd be great. Thank you.
It was based on call volume, was it not?
Yes, Brandon's is based on their call for service for their police department. We don't go through and look at the population of the county without the city of Sioux Falls and the city of Brandon. It's really easy to calculate.
And maybe kind of break it down per capita and also by usage, you know, just to see if there'd be an interesting analogy going forward to understand that.
Certainly. We'll get that information put together and send it off to the clerk's office.
Thank you.
You can share it with us too.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Jameson.
I was just going to add in as well that half of us on this board serve on the with Darren, and you know, I just want to chime in a little bit as well that they've done a great amount of work over there, and they've cut it down to as thin as they could go without compromising public safety. And it's interesting to hear some of the questions the other councilors have as to what some of their concerns might be on the budget. Brandon was a big piece of this, and getting funding from them, getting the 911 funding was a big piece. The downward spiral was coming, and it seems like Darren and his staff have done a tremendous job getting it leveled off, and it's going to be better. I just wanted to add in that I'm confident in Darren's ability and his staff's ability to manage this budget going forward.
Yes.
Then I guess for the folks that are on the Metro Management Council, talk about that phone system. I mean, that's one of the things that we talked about in depth a couple of years ago, is that we're very concerned about the health of the phone system. Is it, and I was taking notes, is it 2015 that it's scheduled for now? Are we going to be okay going that long?
Absolutely.
You want to talk about that?
Yes. Our telephone system is, you know, it works, it's serviceable. We have maintenance contracts in place through 2015. Certainly, when you come across a vendor, they'd love to sell you one today. But the piece of equipment that we have today is, it works fine. What it won't do, though, is some of those next generation pieces. It's not capable of, when we do that transition, to accept videos and text messages. But we're not there. So frankly, if we bought it today, we'd have a real expensive car in the garage that we don't get to drive. So postponing it is it's a good decision. I have no, you know, reservations about using the system that we have in place today.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Darren. Looking for a motion on the county side?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
How are we doing this? We changed the process. I guess we'll go ahead now and take.
I don't know that we need to approve anything. I think we're just, it's
We
a
have-
hearing.
We need to approve the budget as presented. No?
Yes.
We're just having.
I think that'll happen later in the budget process.
Wait, would you like to
But-
then approve the report so that you do have a record of hearing this presentation?
Is that what you would like us to do, Ms. Tucker?
Last year, Denise Tucker, City Clerk's office, last year you did approve the budget as presented at this meeting, for historical purposes. In the past, you have approved the report as presented, and you've also, again, approved the budget as presented.
Then your motion is in order.
This is the night we approve it, I thought. Am I wrong here? Is this just, no?
That was my understanding, Commissioner Kelly.
So we will need a motion from both bodies to approve.
Yes, sir.
So I will,
And I've made one.
okay, we got a motion and John, second. So we have a motion and a second. On the county side, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried unanimous. On the city side,
Move approval, Aguilar.
Second, Erpenbach.
discussion, Kermit?
Yeah, I guess I'm surprised we're approving anything. It just says joint budget hearing. That's it. We're just having a hearing.
Well, last year, the minutes reflect, it said a motion was made by Councilmember Enneman and seconded by Councilmember Anderson, Jr., to approve the budget as presented at this meeting. And the roll call vote showed 7 yes and no no's.
If I may, sir, that's been the same verbiage throughout the years. If you'd like for us to change it, we can in the future.
Because this is just a hearing. It's not a, I mean, if a citizen would take a look at this, would they think we were voting on this tonight? I don't
Yes.
think so.
Confusing.
When we approve ordinances, we always have the first reading, but then the second is a hearing plus the vote on it. So if this is the hearing, we probably should have taken public input if they wanted. But the 2 years that I've been on, Counselor Staggers, we have approved at this joint meeting.
Commissioner Kelly, if I would argue then too that we're going to vote on it yet again, and so will the county as a whole package.
package.
And there's a public hearing related to that motion as well. I
We
can
will
see
have
that.
we'll adopt our final budget.
Yeah. I
2
think we're
weeks
just
ago.
accepting the proposal here.
And as you have not adopted your final budget yet,
No,
right?
and we won't for a couple weeks yet.
If we did, Counselor Kelly,
Go ahead.
Commissioner Kelly, if we didn't approve it, then when we got to the final budget, then there would be a problem if we approved it and they didn't. So I think we do have to go through the joint process first and then later as independent bodies.
Sounds good.
I think so. You're ready to go.
I'm gonna let you take care of this. Your Honor, it's your city.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Councilors Aguilar?
Yes.
Intiman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes,
Motion carried.
doesn't mean anything.
What have we got here, 7?
Now we go to Sioux Falls.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the joint budget hearing for the Siouxland Libraries.
Good afternoon, Mary Johns, Director of Siouxland Libraries. I want to thank you for the opportunity to bring forth our budget and give you a little bit of information about what's happening in Siouxland Libraries, thanks to the agreement that these two bodies made 17 years ago now. We're very grateful for that piece. Just a general overview, we are looking at 4 areas that we're concentrating on this year, and one of those is to expand access to library services, and that's Keep in mind, we understand we're Siouxland Libraries. That's the City of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County. So we are working at additional ways to expand those services and make sure that everyone in the county has access to the wealth of information and resources that we have. We also want to make sure that we're delivering current and relevant materials to all of the residents of Minnehaha County. So we have a number of projects in place that are allowing us to more efficiently move those materials around our system so that everyone has access to the new stuff. We also want to make sure that we're providing fast and efficient service, since that's the kind of world that we live in. So again, we are applying a number of technology applications so that we can improve the service that we offer to all residents of the county. And part of that will come as a result of action that the City Council took earlier that will allow us to implement some new technology to really be able to then divert some of the resources and personnel to direct customer service that allows us to talk about reading and learning and discovering and making more use of the staff's talents in that respect to deliver the service. So of the about $7 million that our budget represents this year, $965,000 of that is from the county. And we are very appreciative of that piece and recognize that much of what happens in Sioux Falls happens in Minnehaha County, and that we share a lot of those resources and experiences. We do have some budget for our capital program this year, which really, first of all, our book collection and ebooks, movies, music, etc., are a part of the capital budget. In addition, we do have a couple of projects at the Cayley and Ronning Branch libraries that we will be making improvements. One is a roof, and the other is security and access, keyless access. In our operating budget, as we've discussed on numerous occasions, personnel, which is our most valuable asset, is also the bigger portion of our operating budget. And this includes the personnel for both the employees at the city branches and the county branches, because all employees are city employees based on the agreement that we have between these two bodies. That also includes any COLAs and merit raises that would be figured in, and additional costs for the new staff that we will be hiring for the Prairie West Branch Library, which will open next summer. And just as an aside, if you've not driven by, you should. It's going up quite nicely, and we're actually picking out furniture, fixtures, and equipment over the next several weeks. So this will be a great resource to our community, and certainly we know that located where it is in Sioux Falls, that there's every opportunity for a lot of folks in the county outside the city limits to be able to use the Prairie West Library. In expanding services, Prairie West is certainly one of those. And we are also doing upgrades to service for our mobile application and Wi-Fi equipment. And that will bring Wi-Fi to all of the rural branches. Right now, the rural branches do not have Wi-Fi access, so this will be a great addition there. We also want to increase the number of active card holders. And as I've mentioned a number of times in speaking with people, it's one thing to have a number of card holders, but we want them to be active so that they're really getting the value out of the card that they have. It beats American Express in your wallet. The current and relevant materials, we tend to look at a number of factors when we're determining if our materials are indeed current and relevant to our offerings. And we look at the per capita expenditure, we look at the per capita circulation, and we look at the turnover rate. And we have the ability to look at other libraries and throughout the country, because of some reports that we all do, to determine where we are in relation to other libraries our size, or peer libraries that we might look at in relation to both the city and the county when we're looking at benchmarks. So we're doing fine there, and we want to make sure that we are able to maintain that piece. With the efficient and increased speed and service, we're going to increase the circulation that is done through our self-check machines. We've had self-check machines for some time, but we aren't necessarily getting our money's worth out of those, because those are just like a staff person who does not take vacation, doesn't take sick leave, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to make sure that people are utilizing those pieces of equipment more, and again, that allows us to move staff to Prairie West, to move staff to other departments where we can make a greater impact on the lives of the people that we serve. Certainly we are about promoting reading, learning, and discovery, and we do that through a number of ways. And in this budget, one of the aspects that we're asking for and that is included is an increase in programming budget money. And this allows us to create more programs that are aimed at all ages and in all locations. So we have programs that apply directly to adults. Many of these have to do with job searching and developing computer skills. And never mind that it's 2012, we still have a lot of people in this country who do not necessarily have computers in their homes or the skills to use them. So that's a big part of what we do. And I just would point out that there are also a number of databases that we help people use. And those range from the ones that are on the screen, from Mango Languages, which you can learn 28 different languages if you're so inclined, World Travelers. There are databases that help people prepare for the ACT test, the SAT test, some of the like truck driver tests and so forth. So those are a lot of resources that people cannot necessarily do on their own. And because of these databases, we're able to provide that. Another way that we're dealing with the idea of reading, learning, and discovery is to put a greater emphasis on our teens. Clearly, we have issues with teens thinking that libraries are not always cool, so we want to make sure that we get their input, and that we have groups of teenagers that we've now created called teen advisory groups. They help us determine what kinds of materials they want, what kinds of activities they have. They're the best mouthpiece in advertising for their peers to get them involved in the library. And while we're not a social agency per se, my theory is that more teens that we can have in the library, there's less chance of them being in trouble on the streets. And if we save one kid from that kind of activity, I'm happy and sleep well at night. Then, of course, we know that we've always been doing story times and programs for children. And we want to put a greater emphasis on the early childhood literacy part, not just story times. But we also know that there are a number of folks in our communities that don't have all of the resources for teaching children to read early on. And we know that modeling that behavior is one of the best ways to create reading habits. So we want to make sure that we're getting to kids before they get to school so that they are ready to read and learn when they get to school. So that will be a renewed emphasis. I would just say that, of course, you recognize that I'm slightly biased, but this is an excellent value that you all provide to your community. And our community benefits from that greatly. But for example, in 2011, 1,181,109 people came through our doors. And I suspect that, there might have been days when some of that count was a little off, and there probably were more than that. And certainly there were a lot of people who accessed us electronically, and that's not represented in this particular value piece. In addition to that, we checked out to these residents of our community 1,963,918 items, nearly 40 million. And if we figured a very conservative cost on that of $20 an item, and I sort of doubt that you can buy too many books for $20 a piece, that's $40 million worth of value that was delivered just in the materials. That does not count the resources and the benefit that people got from the relationships and the interaction with the databases and the classes that we have. And I would almost close by saying, that today we had received a note from a little boy who participated in the summer reading program, and he won the grand prize, which was a guitar, based on some Disney characters, which of course I don't remember now. And he wrote a handwritten thank you to the librarian at Kaylee, who had helped him. Thank you for helping me with my books this summer, and it was, in little kid writing, and his mother wrote an additional note that it was great for the summer reading program, and that not only was he a winner with the guitar, but he was a winner long before the guitar because of the resources and the relationships he had at the library. So it made me feel all good and warm and fuzzy, and I would entertain any questions, and thank you very much for the support that you provide to library services.
Thank you, Mary. Are there any questions? Kermit.
Yes, Mary, you mentioned that $965,000 comes from the county. And of course, when we talk about that county money, we're also talking about money coming from the residents of Sioux Falls who pay county taxes. So my question...
The funds from the county are county taxpayer funds, excluding the City of Sioux Falls and Del Rapids. So the funds, that $965,000 that comes from the county through the county tax levy, discounts Del Rapids and the City of Sioux Falls.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize. How does that discount it?
Because because of the joint merger, which how else would you have a merger if it weren't joint? But the citizens of Sioux Falls, when we were Sioux Falls Public Library, the citizens of Sioux Falls had a tax rate, and we paid taxes. In the county, there is a county levy, and it's specifically based on
A library levy.
Right, it's a
Okay.
library
Oh,
levy.
okay.
And so, but it excludes Sioux Falls, and then Del Rapids had opted out of that at one time because they had their own library system.
Okay, well, thanks for clarifying that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget as presented.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second on the county side to approve the budget. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried unanimous.
With the City of Sioux Falls, would anybody like to make a motion?
Move to approve Entenmann.
Second, Karski.
Councilor Henry has made a motion to approve, seconded by Councilor Dean Karski. Any discussion? Yes, Councilor Karski.
Just wanted to make the comment, Mary, I did drive by the Prairie West Library today. It is progressing very well, and I'm sure the neighbors out there are excited about the potential for that coming on board late next summer. So, thank you.
Thanks.
If there's no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilors Aguilar?
Yes.
Intiman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Okay, 7-0. Thank you, Mary. The next item is the joint budget hearing for the for the Siouxland Heritage Museums. Oh, is there anybody that wanted any public input in? I guess it's a little late now, I'm sorry. You get in your own territory and you get out of it, you get a little confused, but we will have public input on the museum simply because I forgot it on the other two, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill. So they get to question you with everything.
Well, good evening. Bill Hoskins, Director of the Siouxland Heritage Museums. I do want to take an opportunity at the moment to introduce a member of the museum's board. We actually have several members of the board here. Sandy Green is a citizen member of the board. Also, the museum's board includes Councilor Erpenbach and Commissioner Jeff Barth. Just a quick background, the Siouxland Heritage Museums were created in 1974 through a joint cooperative agreement between the City of Sioux Falls. And we operate two buildings, the Pettigrew Home and Museum and the Old Courthouse Museum. Pettigrew is owned by the City of Sioux Falls, the Old Courthouse Museum by Minnehaha County. We have an 11-member board, 4 people under the joint cooperative agreement appointed by the city, 4 people by the county, a liaison county commissioner, the mayor or his designee, and I believe Michelle is his designee, and finally, the president of the Siouxland Heritage Museums Alliance. Both of our buildings are on the National Register of Historic Places. Both are open daily to the public. Attendance is up. It's been up for the last 6 years, and this year is no exception. I think this is indicative of the general growth we're seeing throughout our community and the services being asked for by government. This year, we're at about 10%. In 2011, the museums were awarded the top tourism business in the city by the Sioux Falls Convention and Visitors Bureau. Our budgets aren't probably as straightforward as some of the other organizations or departments you deal with. We actually have 5 different budgets. The museum's operations budget, which originally is funded 50% by the city and 50% by the county, originally was to pay for the salaries and operational expenses associated with the museum. Get more into that. The Old Courthouse Museum budget, the Pettigrew Museum maintenance budget, and 2 revenue budgets, the Museum Special Enterprise Fund and the Museum Store budget. And I'll get more into what the specifics of the requests are. If you look at all 5 of those budgets, The museum's operation budget makes up about 74% of our funding. The old courthouse is 5%, Pettigrew 3%. The enterprise fund today is about 15% of our total budget. The museum store about 3%. If you look at where the money for those budgets are coming from in this proposal in 2013, about 40% is proposed to come from the city, 42% from the county, and 18% we're generating through different revenue efforts. The operations budget, supported half by the city, half by the county, is administered by Minnehaha County. The brief history, if you look at it, the budgets have declined over the recent years. The proposed budget for 2013 does have a small increase. Human resources make up about 92% of our operational budget. Operational expenses, the remaining 8%. Now we are anticipating an increase in the 2013 operations budget, primarily from the human resources. And there's three things that are making up that increase. A 5% cut in county salaries was restored, and so by the commission in February, and so that's inflating our numbers for 2013 over 2012. The commission has also included a 0.7% cost of living adjustment and an anticipated 5% increase in health and dental for 2013. Our operational expenses in the 2013 budget are actually declining slightly, and I suspect that we have made some, we're in the process of making some adjustments that may also decrease some of those areas in the future. The Old Courthouse Museum maintenance budget is something really that's the purview of the Minnehaha County Commission. It's about 5% of the total. Again, we're asking for a small increase in the maintenance budget for 2013 for the Old Courthouse because of some of our maintenance challenges there. This is, you can see the maintenance budget, even the proposed budget, is still quite a bit less than it has been in the past. These are 120-plus-year-old buildings, and they are a challenge on a daily basis to keep up and maintain. What we're really looking at, because of the change in federal law, interior lighting is one of the challenges we're phasing through. Some of the more popular fluorescent lighting has been phased out. Also, the changes in incandescent lighting, the museum's moving to an LED lighting system. We're really phasing that change out over 3 years, and that's part of what we're doing. We're also, the Old Courthouse has over 200 windows, and we're beginning a process of just repair and maintenance of some of those windows, and in the basement in particular, a change out in some of the glazing that's involved. They are both stone buildings, and the masonry joints are something that is an endless project. So this is a quick view of some of the window issues we're seeing. In the basement windows, the glazing has become water stained. It is an acrylic. It is essentially a bulletproof plastic. As one of the window people say, will probably knock the glazing out of the frame before you'll break it. But as they get old, they become more brittle. They also etch with age. So that's one of the projects. Also associated with that will be some changes in the alarm system that's associated with those windows. The tuck point masonry joints, as I said, is an ongoing challenge with the building. Pettigrew Home and Museum is a city budget. It is administered by the county, but all the funds are provided by the City of Sioux Falls. It's about 3% of our total budget, and in 2013 we're asking for $32,000, which is a small increase from previous years. Here's a little bit of the budget history. Again, we're working on exhibit lighting there, same issues we're dealing with at the courtroom. And we're in the midst of a project for replacing the storm windows on the building. It has 98 windows. Each storm window is a custom-made piece. No two windows in the building are exactly the same size. A number of years ago, we looked at pricing out what it would cost to have a contractor replace them all. The cost at that time was about $1,200 per window is what it worked out to. We thought we could do it quite a bit more cost effectively. We are replacing about 16 windows per year. The frames are being produced in our shop, and the cost is about $100 per window. Along with that, as we go through and systematically address the different storm windows, we're also looking at any repairs to the sash and frame and doing those as well. So those are some of the major projects we're working on at the Pettigrew. The Museum Special Enterprise Fund is something I make an annual report to you, usually in the spring. It is a revenue budget. It's administered by the county. Its purpose was to receive revenues and account for expenses associated with the rental of space in the museum system, sponsorships, the provision of programs, events, and services for which a fee is charged. We do a lot with the enterprise fund today. Increasingly, it has become the budget, especially as we have tightening resources available in the operations budget, and something I know Councilmember Staggers has encouraged me to do for many years. We are expanding our programming in the enterprise fund. And the 2013 is proposing about a 20% increase in the enterprise fund budget. If you look at the history, historically, we've been pretty good. It's not every year, but most years our receipts exceed our expenses in the fund. Some of the things we're really looking at as projects, and one of the contingents of the original agreement was that revenue in excess of expense, it was left to the museum board as they put together the budget and recommend to the council and commission to determine how they might allocate that excess revenue. And I hesitate to refer to it that, but that's how it's in the agreement. And some of the things we're looking at are the replacement of the courtroom floor. The floor is somewhat damaged and deteriorating. All our public programming and material costs are in the enterprise fund. All the collections, materials, and conservation costs are in there. A majority of our exhibit costs, but not all at this time. A new exterior sign for the old courthouse museum. And also there are 2 staff positions that are funded about 33% out of the enterprise fund, and that's the events coordinator and the exhibits assistant. The courtroom floor is about 3,000 square feet. You have about 40,000 people a year on that floor, and what's effectively happening is it's a tongue and groove floor, and the top of the groove is cracking, and it creates holes in the floor, and it's becoming dangerous. And so we're looking at the replacement of that. The museum board has allocated in money from the endowment into the enterprise fund to pay for this in part, but the other revenue, excess revenue that we generated will help pay for that. The museum store budget, again, a revenue budget administered by the county, and it's generating, at this point, just enough money that it's paying for itself, and we hope to be able to transfer about $5,000 from the store over to the enterprise fund to help support some of our educational programming we're providing to the public. Whoops, I went too far. I pushed the wrong button. I'm sorry. I got it back here. Slideshow.
Scroll down on that one right there. Scroll down on your right side.
Oh. Well, anyway. And in answer to one of your questions, I think the joint cooperative agreement for the museum says, Kermit, that each year on or before the 1st of October, the city and county shall hold a joint budget hearing to approve the budget for the ensuing year, is the language in our joint cooperative agreement.
Thanks.
Basically, there are 3 budgets that you approve jointly. That's the museum's operations budget. Is a 50-50 split. That's $481,000 for the city and the county. The museum enterprise fund budget, which is a revenue budget of $199,773, and the museum store budget, also a revenue budget of $34,028. I thank you for your continued support of the Siouxland Heritage Museums. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I don't know if Sandy has anything that she would want to say, but thank you.
Dean.
A little bit of sticker shock by the cost of that courtroom floor at over $14 a square foot. Is there some, because it's a historical building, some special requirements as to what we can put in there? I mean, you're talking tongue and groove, pretty expensive stuff. Laminates are very similar, and please answer.
Well, it is on the National Register of Historic Places, and the Secretary of Interior standards for those structures do place some limitations on what we can do with the floor and the materials that we can use. And so to put the type of flooring back in that's required under that provision, yes, that's...
I would also add...
You have to step up to the microphone, please.
And
introduce yourself.
Oh, excuse me. Sandy Dean from Hartford. I'm on the Siouxland Museum Board. I've dealt with old flooring and new flooring for 40 years. We're in the antique business. I live in a restored home. I will tell you that there's no way that the laminated products of today can compare to the quality that is required for this tongue and groove flooring. And part of the reason that we are facing the replacement now is because pennies were pinched when the floor was replaced in the first place.
How old is that floor?
That flooring was installed in 1987. We have original hardwood floors in the building that are in much better shape.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I do have one, and just, we're a 50-50 split, and yet we're at 42%. Kermit, I'm surprised you didn't ask this question.
I'm interested in hearing this.
42%, and the city's at 40. Is there?
Well, if you take a look at all 5 budgets, and you have a maintenance budget for the old courthouse museum, and they have one for the Pettigrew. The old courthouse is a much larger building than the Pettigrew, and your maintenance budget is larger, and when you add that with 50% for the operations budget, that's what gets you to a higher percentage in the total picture.
I knew there'd be an explanation. I was just looking out for the county, too. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I just would make a comment that probably 95% of what the county has to pay on things, what we have to do is required by statute. We have to incarcerate people that are arrested. We have to charge them and prosecute them. We have to defend them. We have to take care of the indigent. The museum is one of the things that we do that is beyond the requirement of state statute. And I'm certainly proud of our efforts in that area, but you know, all of our costs basically are borne by property taxpayers. And at least from my perspective, so many of our costs are related to the consumption and abuse of alcohol in our community. And I truly feel that at some point there needs to be an increase in the tax on alcohol so that we can afford to do some of the things like the museum and have the cost causer pay for the cost of consuming and abusing alcohol, as opposed to people in their homes homes which rarely drink and drive. Anyway.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, I guess we're turn it back to joint commission meeting. Do I have a motion on the county side?
There is a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the budget as as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
And with the City of Sioux Falls.
And we had, I just remember this time. Go.
And with the City of Sioux Falls.
Move approval, Councilor Urbanbach.
Second, Jamison.
Councilor Urbanbach's got a motion to approve, seconded by Councilor Jamison. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote, please.
Councilors Aguilar,
Yes.
Entenmann,
Yes.
Urbanbach,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
7-0. I missed the public input again.
Got it.
Sandy came.
I guess we had a little bit of it. Thank you for the nice letter to the editor, Sandy. Is there any other business to come before the body? Do I have a motion on the county side?
So moved to adjourn.
Second?
I have a motion second to adjourn on the county side. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
Motion
sign.
with the City
Motion
of Sioux
carried.
Falls.
Move to adjourn, Urbanbach.
Second, Karski.
Got a motion and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carried. We are adjourned.
Stare.
Oh, man. That
Stood on.